Why do you think that data professionals today still struggle so much with this problem of garbage data quality, given the availability of so many modern data management tools out there? I guess another way of me asking this question is why, if we have all of these kind of data management tools out there, why don't they fit the bill? Why can't they fix this data quality problem?
Well, the short answer is because it's not actually a technology problem, it's a culture problem. And once you've accepted that it's a culture problem, then you can use the most ideal and optimal technology to help you solve it faster and easier. But just to go back, I sort of mentioned this when we were during our intro, but the data world has been changing very quickly over a relatively short period of time. And when technology evolves to solve some problem, it usually ends up creating a new problem as well. And then people try to solve that new problem, and creating it then solves another problem, and sort of so on and so forth. And in the 1970s and 1980s, I mean, data was everywhere. Everybody was using data. People were using data before they were even using software by many years actually. But it was extraordinarily expensive. You had on-prem databases like Vertica, for example, and because compute and storage were not decoupled, it cost an enormous amount to store any amount of data, to transform any amount of data, and to iterate on any amount of data. And so, because the amount of data that was accessible to teams was so small, you manage data in the same way that a librarian might manage books in a library, right? You can be very thoughtful, you can be a steward, you can be very deliberate about what data you bring in, about what data goes out, and how you organize that data, how you structure it, how your entire data model sort of works together. And so it was people and centralized teams sort of sitting at the middle of this and making sure that quality was high, that governance was in place, that accessibility was high, and so on and so forth. But then we solved that problem, and we solved the problem of cost through cloud storage, right? So cloud storage effectively decoupled compute and storage, and storing any amount of data effectively became free. And businesses thought, well, okay, well, now that it's basically free to store all this stuff, we should be storing as much as we possibly can, because we don't know what's going to be useful or not. And we want to give our teams, our data teams, the opportunity to find what's useful from this large sort of mass of data that we're collecting from all of our systems. So you started to see this sort of exponential explosion of the amount of data that was available. And when you're talking about almost an infinite number of data, infinitely increasing data in some company, that can't be managed by the same small number of data stewards anymore. The same way is that if you tried to have a group of 20 or 30 librarians manage the amount of books that are in Amazon, it would be impossible. There's just too many of them. And so what did companies move to? Well, they moved to automated systems in the same way that Amazon sort of is moving to an automated systems. And that's more of a federated model where you've got a marketplace where the people who are creating the books are working, the sellers are working directly with the people who are buying the books. And in the same way, you've got the people who are producing the data that are working directly with the teams who are consuming the data. The problem is that the industry hasn't fully accepted the federated model. You still actually have that centralized governance or data engineering team or data platform team that's essentially like in the middle, trying to get a handle on all the data that's flowing through to that analytical ecosystem, and it's just not working. And all the tools that exist today are more about making those centralized teams more efficient and more effective than at doing their jobs, than embracing the reality, which is you can't have a centralized team with the massive volumes of data that exist. You actually need to allow the producers and consumers to operate in a federated way, and that just it requires better communication and change management.